In today's video, I'm taking you through my 4-step process for raising your confidence. You're going to get rid of that imposter syndrome. You're going to feel better about yourself and your skills, and you're going to produce professional level garments. If we're just meeting, my name is Claire. I've been on this channel for 6 years, but I've been a dressmaker for 12. If you look through my archive, you're going to find over 160 videos, how-tos, top tips, and a little bit of entertainment in there as well. So do subscribe and hit the like and notification bell. You can also find me over on Facebook and Instagram under Penguin and Pear, so do join me over there. So when I first started to sew, I did not have a clue what I was doing. And if you saw my last video, you might think I still don't. But hey ho, when I started, I did not have a clue. And every mistake I made piled up in my brain to tell me that this is not for you. You can't do this. You should just give up right now. But I didn't listen because that's the person that I am. I kept going. My tenacity paid off because over time what happened was my confidence grew, my self-esteem and my self-worth grew, because I was producing these garments that when they were finished I was like, wow, I made that. So let's get into my 4-step process that's going to take you from insecurity and mistakes to confidence and professional level garments. Step 1 is to get out of your own way. So I spoke just now about the negative self-talk that I had, and I'm sure a lot of you can relate to this. And it doesn't just apply to sewing, does it? It applies to many areas of our lives. So what we do is we try things and we fail. Because we're human, everyone fails at things in the beginning. But what happens is our brain says, you can't do this, you're rubbish at this, you should just give up because you can't achieve anything. And it's just our brain trying to keep us safe. But what it does is it sabotages our efforts if we let it. So we've really got to try to override those negative self-talks. When you try and you hear a negative conversation, sentence, word come into your mind, you have to block it and you have to reframe it. You have to tell yourself that everyone makes mistakes. A mistake is part of the journey. If you can't make a mistake in the beginning, you're never going to be good in the end. So we take those negative thoughts and we reframe them into positive ones, because thoughts lead to actions, lead to behaviour, lead to outcomes. Leave me a comment down below and tell me you're going to promise me to reframe those negative self-talk. So the next part of getting out of our own way so that we can sew is internal versus external blocks. We all have blocks around us, limiting self-beliefs that we tell ourselves is true in order to protect ourselves, as I was just talking about. But what it does is limit us. For example, this is a non-sewing example, but I have just completed a 42-hour fast in order to fix my chronic illness. I set a goal on my phone that I wanted to fast for 42 hours. So I put 42 hours into the app. The whole time that I was fasting, I was thinking at 42 hours, I will be able to eat again. So when 42 hours came along, I was in the kitchen cooking 10 minutes before the deadline, because then I knew my food would be ready at the deadline. I wasn't even that hungry. I could have kept going if I wanted to. If I told myself I was going to go longer, I could have gone longer, but I didn't. I went as far as the goal that I had set, a self-fulfilled goal. And in a way, a goal is a limiting belief, because you are only going to aim to reach that goal, that outcome, and you're not going to take it any further. This can apply with sewing. So say you've sewn a few garments and you're very comfortable sewing, say, a shift dress. Maybe the most complicated thing in the shift dress is a zip, but you know how to do zips. You're very confident, you like wearing them, and you feel good. You feel like you've achieved something when you've made them. So you're only ever going to make shift dress. You're not going to try pin tucks. You're not going to try an elasticated waist. Do you get my point? That if we aim low, we're going to get in our own way, and that's going to be a block. And that is an internal block. That is a block that we have created for ourselves. You could tell yourself that although you have been sewing shift dresses so far, maybe you've made 3 or 4, and that's great. You've got that down. You know how to do that. You do them really well. So why don't I make a decision that with every new garment, I'm going to do something that gives me a new technique? And that way I'm building my repertoire of techniques, I'm building my experience, and I'm building my skills. So what will happen is when you have that thought, when you're going to plan for the next video, you will be saying to yourself, right, what technique do I want to learn? Or you might think you find a dress or a garment that you like and you think, what techniques has it got? That could be your first question. And if it's got new techniques, then you might be more willing to try it because you've told yourself you're going to try it. And over time, that's going to enable you to become a really confident sewer. It's going to enable you to become really good at what you're doing. So what will happen then is you are removing those internal blocks. You are creating whatever the opposite of blocks is. My brain has gone. But you are creating a space within you whereby you can grow, you can learn, you can develop your self-esteem, you can develop your self-worth. And when you develop all of those things, you are not going to approach mistakes and errors and things like that in a way that is the end of the world. You're going to take it for what it is. These are the things that are going to raise your confidence. So there's also, as well as internal blocks, there are external blocks. Life gets in the way, doesn't it? We have work to go to and we might be exhausted after work, and then we've got to come home, we've got to feed the family, we've got to do this. Then on the weekend, we've got to go and visit this person and do this and that. And there's just no time to sew. And that is what you would call an external block. So in that case, planning is going to be key, because if you are never sewing because life is getting in the way, and ask me how I know this, then you're not building your skills, and actually you're going backwards, you're getting rusty, and you're going to be less likely to want to go back to it later on. You've got to think to yourself, how often do I want to sew? If it is every day, then you need to allocate maybe just half an hour at the end of the day to sewing. Done everything, you've been to work, you've done the dinner, you've cooked, you've washed up. That's what we have to do, isn't it? And then you sit down in front of the telly, and that telly time could be your sewing time. So maybe that is the time when you just go to the sewing machine and just put half an hour in. Any external blocks that we have, we can find ways to remove them. Take some time to recognise the blocks, both external and internal, that you have, and then think about workarounds to make it possible. Because like anything in life, if you don't practice, you don't get good at it. And if you don't get good at it, you don't get confident in it. It was Malcolm Gladwell who said that we need 10,000 hours to become expert at anything. I don't know if I agree with that, but it's a pretty good ballpark to aim for. I think 10,000 hours, I worked out one time, was something like 7 years. So when you've done those things, you're going to go really far into getting out of your way. But sometimes you can't actually get to doing those things as much as you might want to do them. You might have a mind block, especially if you're neurodivergent like I am, then you will definitely have some blockage. I would recommend doing some affirmations. Now don't turn the video off, because I know there's a lot of people who are like, oh yeah, whatever, affirmations don't work. Maybe or maybe not when it comes to like self-image, the whole look in the mirror and say I love you 100 times or whatever. That's not something I really subscribe to either. So I understand, but I do think positive talk leads to positive action. And so when we're just really struggling and we just don't want to get on the machine, for example, that skirt that I made in the last video, wow, that's taken me how long? 3 months to make, and it's the most basic pattern. And that is because what happened is I decided quite early on in the making of that skirt that it wasn't going to suit me, and I was right. But because I've decided it wasn't going to suit me, I wasn't motivated to actually do the thing. And so I kept procrastinating, and I'm like, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it tomorrow. I just did not want to do it. Eventually I finished it. If it weren't for doing it for video, then I don't think I would have even finished it, to be honest with you. And that is a really good example of some negative self-talk. If I had said to myself, maybe you don't know if the skirt is going to suit you or not, and you've got a new body shape, so you need to try different styles, and it's really positive because you can try it, and if it suits you, you've got a lovely surprise there. And if it doesn't, that is information for you to take forward into future projects. But without making the skirt, I am never going to know if it is going to suit me. So if you are having blockages with even getting on the sewing machine, sometimes we can just procrastinate without thinking about it too deeply. And if you sense yourself doing that, start giving yourself some positive affirmations, such as, once I start sewing, I will get into it and I will really love it. I am going to sew today because I love sewing and it makes me happy. Sewing makes me happy. You could just say that. Sewing makes me happy. Sewing makes me happy. Sewing makes me happy. I love wearing the clothes that I make. The clothes I make give me a sense of self-esteem. The clothes I make give me a sense of self-worth. The clothes I make me feel amazing. I'm just making that up off the top of my head, but you get the gist. You can just make up some positive affirmations and keep telling yourself, even if you just spend 5 minutes on that every day for a week, I guarantee at the end of the week, you'll be wanting to get on the sewing machine. Let's move on to step 2 of my process, and that is done is better than perfect. So the first point to make in done is better than perfect is that you need to give yourself evidence that you can do these things. So with anything in terms of confidence, if you don't give yourself evidence, then you're not going to raise your self-esteem, your self-worth, your confidence levels. And this applies to sewing as well. If you never sew anything other than a pouch or a bag, you are not going to expand your repertoire, as we spoke about earlier. You need to give yourself the experience of sewing in order to prove to yourself that you can do what you want to do. For example, if you decide to sew a dress, it's a maxi dress and it's tight fitting around the bust, and you're going to have to do a shoulder adjustment, a bicep adjustment, a full bust adjustment, a tummy adjustment maybe. What will happen in the process of learning all of that, you are then going to be able to tell yourself, I know how to do a full bust adjustment now, I know how to do a shoulder adjustment, etc. That feeds back into the affirmations we spoke about, because you're going to be giving yourself positive self-talk, and then you can apply those things that you have learned into your next garment. And it doesn't have to be the same type of garment. It could be a blazer, but you still need a full bust adjustment on the blazer, and you're like, I know that. That's going to save you time. That's going to save you so much stress. It's going to save you so much stress because you have learned, you've given yourself evidence. If you didn't give yourself the evidence on that previous garment, then you might look at a blazer and say, this is a really difficult garment to sew. But when you've tried lots of the different techniques on different garments, easier garments in the past, then you are going to look at that alongside your affirmations, alongside your positive mindset. Remember, we've gotten rid of all the negative self-talk. And you're going to go, yeah, I can do that. And even if you don't believe you can do it, you will look at it and say, I've never done a jacket or a blazer before. I'm not sure if I can do it, but I'm going to give it a go. Let's just make a wearable toile and see how we get on. What's going to happen is when you make that wearable toile, you're going to then say to yourself, that was easier than I thought it was. And it's just going to build on the confidence that you'd already built on and increase it. And you will get to a point where there is no garment that you are not willing to try. So then what you have to do, once you've got that mindset down and you do accept that you need to try different types of garments, and you do go in with trying these garments with as much confidence as you got. You might not have the majority of confidence at this stage, but you're going to say, I'll give it a go anyway. Once you're doing that, you've got that mindset, that is absolutely fantastic. That is the mindset you need for sewing, because something I learned when I first started sewing was that no matter how much you learn, there's always more you can learn. At first I was like, oh, I learned to sew a straight line and I'm like, I can sew now. No, you can't, because you can't do zippers, you can't do buttonholes, you can't do welt pockets, you can't do Hong Kong seams, the list goes on. But now, as an experienced sewer, I look at that in a really positive light, because no matter how much I learn, I'm always going to have more to learn, and thus sewing never gets boring. It always gets more rewarding. So what you need to do now is spend time practicing and repeating. A good way to do this, I find, is that when you're making a garment, to make sure you make a toile, maybe 2 or 3 toiles if you need to. You'll remember that when I made my paisley top, I did 4 toiles, and in the process of doing that, I ended up practicing, in that case, gathers quite a lot, because there was a lot of gathers. It was a very boho top, and they became less intimidating over time. I used to avoid gathers, not because I couldn't do them, but I just found them really tedious, and I found them not intimidating, that's not the right word, but it's just, I just didn't want to do them. I did them so often and they just became routine. I stopped dreading them and I was able to just get on with them. I would just pick a gathered dress or whatever now without thinking about it. And that only happened because of the practice. So don't shy away from making wearable toiles. If you're making wearable toiles and then you save your favourite fabric for the end, you're going to have such a well-fitting garment that you are just not going to look back. And I personally think the better a garment fits you at the end, the more confidence it's going to give you. But not only that, more likely you're going to wear it. Because have you ever made a garment and like the shoulders are slipping off, so you just end up not wearing it? You could also get a piece of scrap muslin and just sew straight lines. You can even draw on the lines and then just sew them for practice. You can practice buttonholes, you can practice all sorts of things. You do not need to be making an actual garment in order to practice techniques, and that is really going to raise your confidence and take you forward. Throughout this talk, I've been trying to really instill the idea that mistakes are not a bad thing. Mistakes are part of the process, and mistakes are information for us to take forward. So what happens often when we make mistakes is we get frustrated in the moment. We don't know why that mistake has happened. We want to just fix it, so we'll be unpicking, and then we're doing it again and we fail again and we unpick it and pack it. Eventually we do it and it's just to like an acceptable level, it's not professional or whatever, and then we move on because we've had enough. We just want to finish the garment. What happens is then you finish the garment and you don't really think about that mistake again. Or the other option is the mistake gets the better of you and you give up on the garment and you say the garment's too difficult and you walk away and you don't think about it because it's too difficult. Well, I would encourage you to think about your mistake, take time to reflect on those mistakes and what you could have done to achieve a better result. There can be all sorts of reasons, and when you reflect on those reasons, you can then work backwards and say, what can I do differently next time that is going to increase the likelihood of a successful outcome? So for example, if you were rushing through the garment, you could tell yourself you're going to give yourself more time, you're going to slow down, you're going to enjoy the process. And then believe me, when you do that, you will make less mistakes. If it's a poor choice of fabric, maybe you could do some research or even ask other people who are more experienced than you what fabric would be best, and move forward with that. Whatever the mistake is, you want to tell yourself, and not just tell yourself, write this down because you will forget it. What did I do last time? Now, if it's just in your brain, it's probably not in your brain anymore, is it? We all got like a sieve brain. So if we had written it down, we can go and review what we had written, and then we can assess, change, and make the changes we need in order to have a better outcome, and a better outcome is going to improve our confidence. So if you are still with me, you must be really enjoying this talk. So thank you for staying here. Give me a heart emoji down in the comments below. I would like to ask you to subscribe, like, comment, share, do all the things to help the channel. I can then help a lot more people if a lot more people see my videos. So if you would like to support the channel in a bigger way, then you can buy me a coffee. That's like a little tip just to say thank you for all the free content that I am putting out. So let's get on to the next step, which is the third step in this process. So step 3, I'm calling hell yeah, I can. Hell yeah, I can. So step 1 was about getting out of our own way. Step 2 was about practice. Done is better than perfect. And step 3 is the confidence has been building. We're getting more confidence. Our self-esteem is up, our self-worth. We know what we can do. We know what we are capable. Hell yeah, we do. Now you've got that bit of confidence and you know you can excel, but your skills are still lacking somewhat. You are going to start choosing garments that are outside of your comfort zone. Although you may have done this earlier, when you get to this stage, you are going to be really gung-ho, focused, laser focused on doing garments that take you out of your comfort zone. If you look at a garment that you want to make and you think, I can make that with my eyes closed, that's not the garment for you in this stage. The garment for you in this stage is a garment that you look at and you are intimidated by the idea of making it, but you will look at it closer and you will, at this point, you will understand that techniques can be broken down. So rather than thinking of a whole garment that's got 12 techniques, that you've never done 8 of them, so it's way too much for you, you're going to start thinking about a pattern as like an umbrella. Put your umbrella up and the umbrella will protect you from the rain. In this analogy, then the rain is your negative self-talk. So this umbrella is protecting you. This pattern that you've chosen that is way out of your comfort zone, well, not necessarily way out, but it is out of your comfort zone. And then within that umbrella, under the umbrella, the face of your pattern is all the different techniques, the different steps that you need to take in order to complete the project. And you're going to understand that making a toile is a step, putting a zip in is a step, doing a buttonhole is a step, doing a facing is a step. Whatever it is, every bit is a different step, and it doesn't have to be thought of as one whole pattern. It can be thought of as a series of techniques. And when you adopt that mindset, you are going to be less intimidated by the pattern. You are going to feel more empowered by the pattern. You are going to feel more confident to be able to complete the pattern. And you're going to be excited by the pattern. So, are you going to do that? Let me know, because I think it's a really good way of approaching pattern making, to be honest, because there is such a wide range of skills and techniques that we can learn. Building all that knowledge base, that skills, which raises your confidence, is going to be pivotal. I want you to be choosing patterns that you a year ago would never dreamed of picking. You are pushing yourself out of this comfort zone. I think it was Brené Brown actually who said you can have comfort and you can have courage, but you cannot have both at the same time. So in order to have courage, to do things, to be brave, to try things that you have never tried before, you absolutely cannot stay in your comfort zone. Even if you have to come out of it kicking and screaming, you have got to drag yourself out of that comfort zone. It's doing you no good, not in sewing. It's doing you no good. You've agreed with me now that you're going to come out of your comfort zone. You're going to push yourself. You're going to be brave. You're going to be courageous. You are going to try different things. You are going to go along and you're going to be learning, and it's going to be making you really happy. You're going to be getting your dopamine hits. What's going to happen is eventually you will stagnate. You will come to not a halt, but just a lull. You've learned lots of stuff. You're feeling a bit overwhelmed with how much you have learned. You just want to apply it, and you must apply it. But you are going to come to a point where you don't want to move forward with the next technique or learning a new thing. You just want to stay in your comfort zone again. And when you notice that happening, that is when you have to employ things to take you out of stagnation. As Brené Brown said, you can't have courage and comfort at the same time. When you have courage, you are learning, you are developing, you're growing your confidence. And when you are comfortable, you are just comfortable. You're not anything else. You have to recognize when you're stagnating, when you're in a rut, when you are bored even by what you're doing, then it is time to mix it up. Maybe you need to find a different way to learn. So maybe if you had been reading sewing books, maybe it's time to look on YouTube videos. Maybe if you are self-taught, it's maybe going to a class. It might just be meeting up with other sewing people and talking about sewing things, or watching videos like this that give you the motivation to keep going. If it's in terms of techniques and you feel that you've learned all the techniques there are to learn, which techniques could do with some practice, which techniques could do with improving, go back and review those techniques, or do a pattern, revisit a pattern that you loved in the past. Now, this is a really big thing, is that when you're stagnating, go back to a pattern that you made in the past that you loved and enjoyed and give it a go. You always want to be breaking it up. So like within my diet world, if you like, my fasting and my carnivore lifestyle, when I do the same thing day in, day out, I stop getting results eventually. So for example, I do an OMAD, so that's where I eat one meal a day and then I fast for 23 hours. I did that for months on end and I got great results. Eventually what happened is my weight stalled because my metabolism had dropped, because my body knew what to expect every single day. And it's similar in this way, because if you are doing the same thing, even if you're doing new techniques every day, so you're learning in that, but eventually that's going to bore you and you're going to lose interest. So you need at that point to go back and choose a pattern that you just absolutely love and make it just because you love it. Now that flies in the face of the whole comfort zone, because that is very comfort zoney. If one project in your comfort zone is going to revive you to get out of your comfort zone again, it's going to be worth it, because it's going to propel you further. Likewise, when OMAD stopped working for me, I came off it and I went to 16/8. And I did that for about 6 weeks before and after Christmas. I was able to start doing longer fasts, even longer than OMAD, and the weight started dropping again. So what you're going to do in terms of sewing is, when you get bored, do a comfort make, then go back to learning new things, pushing yourself forward, and you're going to go much further than you would have if you didn't do that one comfort project. So my memory card was full up earlier, so we're quite a bit later now. You want to think about your style. Style is going to be so important, because if you approach sewing, you approach your patterns and you just are scrolling and you see a pattern, it looks beautiful on a model. She might not look like anything like your body looks, but you think she looks beautiful and you really want to make it. Hit buy, hit download, and make it without any thought whatsoever to whether it will suit you, whether it suits your body type, whether you're going to feel comfortable in it, whether you're going to feel confident in it. I can't tell you how many garments I made back in the day where I employed this strategy or non-strategy, and I made them and I just weren't happy with them. They didn't fit right because I didn't do toiles, and then I didn't like them because they weren't to my style. I made a dress, the Eve dress by Sew Over It. It was modelled by Lisa Comfort. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was to my style. Just thought it was to my style without really thinking about it. And I made it for Christmas in a pink velvet. Oh my God. I was pretty new to sewing. Velvet is really difficult to sew with. And I made it. I got through it in the end. It was a lot of work and it did not suit me at all. And if I had listened to this advice now back then, I wouldn't have made it, because if I'd thought for even 2 minutes about it, it would have been very obvious that it was not to my style. You must know your style before you're sewing the patterns, especially at this stage. Not so much in the beginning, because it's very much trial and error. But at this stage, you should have a really good idea about what type of garments you like to wear, which type of garments that you keep going to in your wardrobe, that you wear again and again, and then use those garments and build around those garments. So, for example, a couple of videos ago, I did a capsule wardrobe video and I talked about building your wardrobe. So you want to take those garments that you wear a lot and then build other pieces around them. So once you know that, and the type of fabrics that you like that look good on you are your colours, they express your identity, then I really think you are in a much better place. You're positioning yourself in the very best place to be able to make successful garments. And when you make successful garments, that's going to raise your confidence. So now we're heading over to the 4th step in this 4-step process, and that is invest in yourself. I've got 3 areas in which we are going to invest in ourselves. We've gotten out of our own way. We've stopped those mental blocks, haven't we? We have been practicing. We've gained some confidence, and now we are going to invest in those tools that are going to really escalate our sewing. All these steps are going to be giving you the very best basis to grow your confidence, grow your self-esteem, your self-worth, and get really great rewards out of sewing. The first thing you're going to do to invest in yourself is buy high quality notions, tools, even sewing machines. So you've been sewing for quite a while at this stage, so now it is time to invest in yourself. Obviously, if you've got money to do this, but if you haven't, then you can bypass this step. But for those that do have some money and possibly been wanting to invest in maybe a new sewing machine or a new pair of scissors or a new serger, I'm looking around, you really want to go high quality, even with things like thread and needles. When I first started sewing, I was buying Poundland needles, so like dollar store, and they were making do and they got me through. They were cheap as chips. I was able to spend my money on fabric and stuff. But even fabric, I was buying from like the pound fabrics. Yeah, I think that's what they call pound fabrics. getting fabric for as cheap as I possibly could. And those things are fine when you're practicing if you don't have a lot of money, and I wouldn't try to negate you buying those things if that is where your means are at. But at this stage, you've been sewing for quite a while, you know it's something you love, you know you're going to stick at it. So now is the time to invest. I say a few years ago, about 8 years ago now, I invested in my sewing machine, which I always get questions about which sewing machine it is. It's the Brother Innovus NV 1800Q. I just fell in love with it and I went ahead and bought it, and I have not regretted it. It was a very big purchase for me at that time and I just love it. And then a couple of years ago, I upgraded my serger. Now I would love to get an air threaded serger, but I can't afford that. But I got one, the next best thing really, that opens up at the front, enabling the threading to be a little bit easier. I have not looked back. It's really improved my sewing, both of those things. Certainly in terms of machines, if you've got a machine that you love, you're going to want to sew more. And then when you sew more, you practice more. And when you practice more, you get better, quicker, and it raises your confidence. I've got some Orifil threads, I've got some Gutermann threads, and I just feel that they are so much superior to the cheaper threads. But again, it is where your means are at, so buy within your means. Scissors, pins, buttons, zips, all those kinds of things are all things you can upgrade and buy better quality, because when you buy better quality, what's going to happen is you're going to have a more professional garment. The skills and experience that you have been learning over the months and years are going to be displayed in an even better way, because the garments are going to look good, they're going to wash well, they're going to last a long time, and that is going to make you feel good about the process that you have been through. I can't keep saying it, it's just going to raise your confidence, your self-esteem. Everything I've talked about in this video is going to do those things. I really think we underestimate the need to have quality tools and notions. But the next thing you're going to do to up your sewing, up your confidence, is you are going to educate yourself. You're going to get on YouTube. I know you're on YouTube because you're watching me and you are probably doing this point already. Watch sew alongs. If there's a pattern with techniques that you're unsure about, watch the sew along for it. I still do that now. And when you have an easier time during sewing, that is going to make you have good memories to look back on. When you think about the top you made a couple of weeks ago, you're going to think, oh, I did that with a breeze. I can make this next thing very easily. And it's just going to raise your confidence, raise the actions that you take in the future, and you are not going to look back. Other areas you can look in are books, maybe in the library. You can look at blog posts online. There's a wealth of information out there. The third thing you're going to do with caution, you do have to be cautious about this, is engage in the sewing community. So when I first came to sewing, I was really immersed. Actually, I was on Instagram before I was on YouTube. And I was really immersed, seeing what other people were making. We're all out there learning to sew ourselves, so we all have information to share. And I just think if you're not engaging in the sewing community at this stage, the fourth step, then you are missing a whole chunk of possible learning that you could be doing. And it's not just about learning skills and how to improve your sewing, but often, I know on my own channel, I will share my story when things haven't gone right. I will share my story when I feel like I've got imposter syndrome, or I will just share my story and say, I think I'm really rubbish at this. And that can be really helpful to other people, because someone, you even, might be watching me and thinking that you can relate more to me when I show the downsides as well as the upsides. There are so many ways in which the online community can be helpful to you. that is all I've got. It's quite a long video and my neighbours are drilling, so we are going to leave it here. If you want bigger tips on how to approach your sewing as a beginner, you want to watch this video next because it's got all the information you could ever possibly want. Until next time, I'm going to love you and leave you. I'll chat to you down below. Bye for now.